appreciate all you and your wife do. It's but you must get frustrated, Tom, but you got to keep going on, don't you? You just got to keep the faith and just hope something happens. Our next speaker, Jack MacLeran, was instrumental in helping the truckers. He walked the bridge, blocked the bridge with regard to fairness as a two-way street. He's a big supporter. He does a great job at Queen's Park. Really holds him accountable. He's he's going to be there for a long time, and he's got a lot to say. And again, we really appreciate him coming out. And Jack, may I mention tomorrow, or is this an open event or at the barn? Jack's having his Riding Association barn dance tomorrow night, June the 20th, from 6 to 8 o'clock is the barbecue, and a 7 to midnight dance with just two guys and the Chinese dancers. So everybody's welcome to come. I've not been, Jack. I'm going to try to talk my wife into going, but they say it's a very, very nice evening. So if you want to come out and support Jack and everybody and see Patrick Brown and such, that's a good time to go. Here's Jack MacLeran.
Thank you, Ron, and it's always a pleasure to be anywhere in Eastern Ontario with landowners. As you know, I'm a past president of the Ontario Landowners Association. That was a proud time of my life. And becoming an MPP was just the next step of trying to take to Queen's Park the idea that landowners' values are good, and they're good for Ontario, and they're good for Canada, and they need to be held in regard by politicians, and our laws need to be created with the values that we stand for in mind, which are Canadian values. And the Green Energy Act certainly ignores those values and those rights and our property rights. It's a terrible piece of legislation. I would call it an immoral piece of legislation because it pits neighbor against neighbor. People end up doing things for money that are wrong for the community, wrong for their neighbors, and they hurt neighbors. So wherever we have wind power, wind turbines, or solar farms, you have unhappy communities. You have neighbors against neighbors. We see what has done in southwestern Ontario and areas like Orangeville area, particularly Huron County, where there's a lot of wind towers. And literally it's about every second farm has a wind tower and every second farm does not. And so it's neighbor against neighbor, and there's an awful lot of hostility, an awful lot of bad will. And that's just a terrible thing to see in a community where such unhappiness is created, because it basically turns people, it makes immoral people out of people because it tempts them with this easy money. If you just put up some solar panels or just put up some wind towers. And as you've heard all before, we don't need the electricity. We have all the power we need. Unfortunately, with this bad government and bad management and big spending and taxes and now very high cost electricity, because the result of the impact on the cost of electricity is that it goes up because of the huge subsidies paid for wind and solar power. And we don't even need it, and it's not reliable. So every time we put up wind or solar and produce a certain amount of electricity, when the sun shines or the wind blows, we have to have a gas plant or a nuclear plant to produce that amount of electricity as backup, because in case the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing. So it doesn't work. So it's such a waste of money, and most of the money, unfortunately, for these big installations goes offshore to Samsung or French companies or other companies. But it's not usually the local little fellow that gets most of it, except for rent for the facility. Having said all that, this terrible piece of legislation, as you know, takes away all authority and ability of municipalities, which is grassroots people, to say no. So there's nothing you can do but watch. There's nothing that your elected municipal representatives can do but watch. You can voice your opinion of objection like you're doing and like people do all across the province of Ontario, and that's good. And if you're contemplating civil disobedience, I would say that's good. So the more noise you make, the more protesting you do, the more media attention you get, and the more uncomfortable you make the government and the companies and your neighbors who have signed up for these wrongful contracts. I'd say that is all good stuff. But in court, we're not winning the battle, and it is the law, and they have the right to do it, and that's wrong. So as government, all we can do at this point in time is say to you, we're working very, very hard under our new leader, Patrick Brown, to get elected in probably less than 3 years' time. I have every confidence that that will happen, because I'm telling you, for me, working at Queen's Park now, since Patrick Brown has been in the leadership race, and I supported him, And since he won the race on May 9th, the mood in caucus for the PC party has changed immensely. And I like going to work now for the first time in 3 years. I like going to work now because when I speak up and say the kinds of things that I say to you, and I don't have to say to you because you know that's the way I think, that's the way you think. He agrees with me. Patrick Brown agrees with me. There was, for instance, there's a piece of legislation coming down the pipeline right now that's going to pass, unfortunately, so it'll be another type of Green Energy Act. It's called the Great Lakes Protection Act. It's going to pass because we have a majority Liberal government and the NDP support it as well, because neither one of them have any respect for private property rights. But it's going to be another Conservation Authority, Endangered Species Act type of thing where they put more land use restrictions on private property, and it's going to cover 105 of the 107 ridings in Ontario. So unless you live on Hudson Bay or James Bay, you're going to be affected. So wherever there's people and private property rights, we are going to be affected. And it's going to create something called a Guardians Council, which is a new committee that will be have people appointed to it by the minister, which probably won't be farmers from Eastern Ontario or any other part of Ontario or property owners. It'll be, we think, the environmental non-government organizations. They'll be able to come up with, what's the term, geographically significant initiatives. I think I have the term right, maybe not quite. And you might say, well, what is that? Well, the legislation doesn't say what that is. It'll be whatever the Guardian Council says it is. So in other words, they can do whatever they want to you, and then they can go and do fundraising in any way or shape or form they want to do. So it doesn't define anything, and it gives them authority over municipalities again. So municipalities will have no say, just like the Green Energy Act. They're going to have be in bed with the conservation authorities as defined in this piece of legislation. So the conservation authorities will be even stronger to put more of these land use restrictions on your private property to protect it from something, whatever that is. And it's going to pass. So my point here is our caucus, and there's 28 of us, our critic was saying, well, maybe we should vote yes on second reading and no on third reading. You know, because we're opposed to it, but we don't want to offend the environmentalists. Which I don't know that too many of them vote for us anyway, so I don't know what we're worried about, but this was the rationale. So we kind of worried about, you know, the thought process wasn't all bad, but the result was wrong, and I stood up and said, well, this is very bad legislation in every way, shape, or form, and nothing good is going to come out of it for landowners across Ontario. So for the base of people that we represent, the answer can only be no, no, no. And I talked to Patrick Brown, and he agreed. I never used to get those kind of, the leadership before would never agree with me on that. So he said, let's talk it through in caucus. And anyways, we got it turned around. And so now we are voting no on second reading, and all of our caucus agreed to that, as well as on third reading. Now, that's just political posturing because it's going to pass anyways. But I think it's important for you to see that we are voting no to something that's bad for you. That's the point of that. And we very nearly made a mistake and we're doing the wrong thing. So under Patrick's leadership, there's going to be more of that happen. What I call rightful property rights decisions. And I just found that such a refreshing time because that's the first time in 3.5 years I have ever had that kind of experience. I used to be criticized badly for speaking up like that. The landowner voice was not a welcome voice. It was frowned upon, shit upon pretty well, but not anymore. So we are significant at Queen's Park now. We are listened to, and we have the leader's ear, and I'm telling you, it's wonderful. So I do like going to work now. He knows that, so he's giving me twice as much work. So if I can digress a little bit, I'll tell you what the twice as much work is, because this is actually kind of good news. The way we're going to fix things like Green Energy Acts, and this Great Lakes Protection Act will happen. Fortunately, hopefully it will take a few years before it hurts anybody. Hopefully we're government and we can repeal it. Because we can do that. We can repeal anything. Yeah.
Will you tear down the monstrosities?
We'll do.
We're done.
You mean the wind towers?
Yeah.
Well, we'll end the Green Energy Act. There'll be no more built. I'm not sure what we can do about 20-year contracts. If there is, and we'll have to have some good lawyers for that one, we'll...
I'm here. I've got it fixed.
Okay, Liz will talk to you on that. We'll do whatever we can, because we have to. But the point is, we need, if we become government, then we'll have the power and the authority to make decisions to repeal something, stop the Green Energy Act, and much, much more. There's so much bad legislation out there that we need to either repeal or change so it stops hurting people. To get there, we have to win the election in 3 years. To win the election in 3 years, we have to earn the trust of so many more people in Ontario than we have now, because we've done an amazing job of destroying the trust in the PC Party of Ontario of the majority of the voters. As you saw in the last election, we have 28 seats out of 107. We're not even close. And the last time we should have won easily. So we ran a bad campaign. Probably I can say our leader was not looked on very favorably by just about anybody. And we reaped the results. So now we have a leader who's a real pro. He's a true conservative. He has true values. True values. And I love saying the word, and it's not even Canadian values, it's even international values. By values I say freedom, democracy, the family unit is the most important thing of all. And of course we want freedom to be able to go and get a job so we can earn some money to raise our families with some dignity and some respect. We're happy to pay some taxes, but not be taxed to death. That's what values are. We do have democracy, we do have freedom, we do have rights in this country. It's the greatest country in the world, but gradually those rights and freedoms are being taken away from us with the green legislations, and we have to stop that. So, to win that, we have to go to talk to people in communities where we have never won before, which is Toronto. There's 6 million people there. 52% of the people in the city of Toronto were not born in Canada. So the audience is there. Don't look like this audience. They're different. So you have ethnic groups from almost every country in the world. Some of the biggest ones are Indians. There's a lot of Indian people in Toronto. Patrick Brown is a personal friend of Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister of India, who's just a rock star of a leader in the world, probably #1 leader. He came to Toronto about 2 months ago before the leadership race. Came to a Patrick Brown meeting. Patrick spent 2 days with him because he's been to India 15 times and has developed a personal friendship, and he supports Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi came to Ontario and said to all the Indians here, you should vote for Patrick Brown. That's pretty powerful. There's 350,000 Indians from the state of Gujarat, one state, where Mr. Modi grew up. 350,000, and I bet you every damn one of them is going to be voting for Patrick Brown because Mr. Modi said so, and they think he just walks on political water. There's other Indians out from other states. There's the Sikhs, there's the Tamils, there's the Filipinos, the Chinese communities, and others. Big numbers of these people. The Tamils sold about 11,000 memberships in the PC Party of Ontario to support Patrick Brown. He sold 40,000 memberships. Christine Elliott sold 15,000. So over a quarter of the memberships he sold to all the people of Ontario came from the Tamil people who live in Ontario. There's more Tamils in Canada than any other country in the world outside of Sri Lanka. There's more Tamils in Toronto than any other city in the world. There's 350,000 of them in Ontario, and 11,000 of them bought memberships and helped Patrick to win. So he's appointed me as, now what Patrick has done is saying we have to go and make inroads to these ethnic communities, which means going to all their little community events, barbecues, festivals, whatever they might have. We have to show up.
Photo walls.
No, it's more than photo op. Talk to them, get to know their names, listen to them, understand what they think, what they want, what their problems are, and be sincere and genuine and come back again and again and again. So they develop, so we earn their trust, earn their support. And that's not easy because we haven't been there before because we didn't show up for work. So he's appointed me to be the Tamil liaison person. Each of the 28 of us has been appointed to an ethnic group. I also have the Turkish people. It means I go to Toronto about twice as much as I used to go. So people say, oh, you're off for the summer, you're home on the farm, you get to cut hay. I don't even know how to start the tractor. Or I don't get to drive it anyway. I have to go ask Ray where it is and where the key is. But Ray, who works for us. So But it's a real privilege and a real honor, especially to have Patrick appoint me to look after the Tamils, because that is the particular ethnic group that has been most important to him all the way along. And I take that privilege very seriously. Last weekend I was in Toronto for 4 different events for Tamils and Azerbaijan people. The weekend before was 5. I'm going back there on Wednesday, and whenever they want me to come, I will go. And my colleagues will be doing the same thing with the other ethnic groups. There's so many of them there, as I mentioned earlier. Imagine if we spend the next 3 years coming to their events, talking to them, being sincere, being genuine, like we're doing right here, listening. And when it comes to election time, ask them to support us, because now we know who they are, what their concerns are, what their worries are, and what they want us to do. And as their elected representative, we should be listening to them. Here, it's property rights right now and wind turbines. For the Tamils in Toronto, it'll be a different issue, but it'll be important to them. So we have to know what that problem is, we have to understand it, and earn their trust that we're going to listen and do something for them to make life better for them, just like we have earned your trust, and we're going to work as hard as hell to make life better for you. So it's exciting times. So we have 28 of us going to all these ethnic groups, and that's the job we need to do that we never did before. The federal government does it very, very well with Jason Kenney, and Patrick's been doing it for 7 or 8 years as a federal MP. And they've won seats. They have seats in Ontario where we do not, because